Cattle raiding was once an integral part of Highland warrior culture, from the early Bronze Age all the way to as recent as the 19th century. A raid would often involve a long march using indirect routes over the mountains and glens to sneak into a rival clan's territory. Then, under the cover of darkness, you would round up as many of their cattle as you could and try to drive them back to your land, all while trying not to get caught in the process. Cattle raiding wasn't just a way of gathering wealth in the form of livestock, but it was also used as an initiation rite for young men to prove their skill and bravery, and if successful, it was a chance for them to be remembered immortally through the songs and poems of their kindred. In this video, I'll discuss the history and cultural significance of cattle raiding, as well as the role of poetry in Highland warrior culture. But I knew it wasn't enough just to talk and theorise about it. Reading about these incredible feats of endurance and fieldcraft, I couldn't help but feel like a big 21st century softie. So, I knew what I had to do. To see what it was like, I team up with my buddy Jason, and together we reenact a cattle raid of our own, embarking on a 20-mile hike across the Isle of Skye, burdened with the footwear, clothing, and weapons of the 17th century Highlanders. Join us as we raid some cattle, compose a poem, and trek through the day and the night using only the moon to guide us, all while trying to remain undetected from the most dangerous thing in the Scottish Highlands: tourists. Hi folks, Tom from Van Dabidozi. Thanks for tuning in. Here with another video for the Highlander series, where I'm looking at the typical 17th century Highlander through the context of wilderness living skills. Now, if this is the first in the series that you're watching, then you can check out my entire historical learning journey in my playlist linked up here. So essentially, I've spent my entire life hiking, camping, fishing and trekking all around the Scottish Highlands. So I know very well firsthand just how hostile the weather and the terrain here can be, even with all your fancy modern outdoor waterproof jackets, tents and navigational devices. So I've always been fascinated and inspired by how the people of the past could thrive out here with really very minimal and basic equipment. So when I started this series, you could say my main interest was, and really still is, these practical survival skills. However, very quickly after starting, I realised you can't really separate these practical survival skills from the greater cultural and historical context. So this learning journey has really led me to learn so much about my country's history and cultural evolution, which I just never expected when I first started. And what's been a real eye-opener for me is really just seeing how all these complex events and things throughout history have fed into the stream of time, leading us to where we are now. So you can see this video sort of touches upon all these things. I cover history, culture, practical field survival skills, and a bit about modern Scotland too. So if you want to learn these practical survival skills and see how we can bring the resilient Highland spirit back to the present day, then check out my online course, Resilient Roots, found on my website, tomlanghorne.com. On my website, you can also find a free survival checklist, as well as links to my Patreon page where we nerd out about history, and there you can also find my t-shirts. And if you enjoy this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. So let me first give you a brief history on cattle raiding, and warrior culture in the Scottish Highlands to give you some context on how we came up with our own Highland warrior cattle raiding challenge. So essentially, after the last ice age, the people of Scotland were nomadic hunter-gatherers, and roaming around the wilds of Scotland with them was a species of wild cattle known as the oryx. And this wild cattle is essentially the ancestor of what is now the Highland cow. And over many centuries, hunter-gatherers managed to domesticate the species of wild cattle, and by the late Bronze Age, cattle remained the main form of wealth in the Scottish Highlands, really right up until only the last century or so. So what did Highland cows actually look like back then?
Well, there probably was a fair bit of variation through the centuries, but they were generally small, hardy, mobile beasts who spent most of their time grazing on the open hill. For most of their existence, most of them would have probably had a black coloured coat, and it was only really in the Victorian era did people start to prefer and selectively breed for the sort of ginger coloured coat that we associate with Highland coos today. Now, no one really knows when the culture of cattle raiding really began, but one of our earliest records is from the Irish mythology story The Táin, or the cattle raid of Cooley, which was first recorded in the 1st century BC, but was probably passed on orally for many centuries before that. And Irish and Highland culture were very closely linked. Now, the very last recorded cattle raid in the Scottish Highlands was as recent as the year 1818 by a guy called Ian Dhu Cameron over in Loch Arkaig. So really, cattle raiding only stopped about 200 years ago. So now let's look at the subject of cattle raiding from an anthropological perspective, because you see a pattern in cultures all around the world and ages when you marry a cattle-based economy with a harsh, unfertile environment, you always seem to get a strong warrior culture. Because if you think about it, if your wealth has got legs and it has to be constantly moved and grazed to keep its wealth and increase its wealth, then it leaves it very vulnerable to be lifted and vice versa. Therefore, if you are a young man trying to prove that you are a valuable member of the community, then the skills and attributes that are celebrated and encouraged by that community are really skills that allow you to be out in the field a long time, grazing and defending and raiding said wealth on legs. Therefore, it wasn't just in the Scottish Highlands that you found this warrior culture around cattle raiding, but also the Maasai of East Africa, the Mongols of Central Asia, and the Dinka people of South Sudan, just to name a few. Now, with this said, cattle raiding wasn't just about acquiring wealth, but it was an important initiation rite for young men into adulthood. And it was also a way for young chieftains to prove that they were worthy for governing their clan. It also had some fairly complex game-like honour system attached to it. Here is a quote from a book written in 1695 describing the Western Highlands. The young men of the islands made it their practice to go upon these predatory excursions, not so much out of want, but as for desire to show their valour and dexterity. He goes on to write, when they went upon a design of robbing or stealing their neighbours' cattle, they first gave notice to those to whom they were to steal, though it might be their mortal enemy. If the party warned did secure his cattle, then the robbers were disappointed and could not meddle with them at that time. But if they neglected the caution given, they could not complain of the robbery after. So this shows that there was this sort of game-like honour system attached to the cattle raid, and sometimes the rival clan was forewarned just to make it all a bit more difficult and fun. Now, another big part of warrior culture and Gaelic culture in general was poetry. And here is a quote from the book Warriors of the Word by Michael Newton. Poetry was not merely a decorative art in Gaelic society. It was essential to the warrior culture, where the deeds of the strong and the brave were not only celebrated, but preserved for eternity. The bard ensured that the bravery of the warriors would not be forgotten, and that future generations would know their ancestors through song. So this shows that poetry wasn't just a part of everyday life and a way of record keeping. It was an important part of the warrior culture, not only as a thing to do and to motivate you, but as a motivation to do something brave so that maybe the bard will include your name in a verse and that your future ancestors will remember you. So now you know a bit about the history and culture of cattle raiding. Now let me tell you how Jason and I designed our own cattle raid warrior challenge. Well, we did first flirt with the idea of, okay, how can we borrow a herd of Highland cows and get a bunch of people to play the rival clan and we can somehow steal the cows off them? But it very quickly was becoming too complicated and high budget. So we thought, okay, what can we do easily? What can we do on a weekend in between our other life commitments that would at least give us a taste of what it was like to conduct a cattle raid? And we wanted to test three things: endurance, stealth, and poetry. So first of all, location, where we're going to do it. Well, Jason was living on the Isle of Skye at the time, so I thought, okay, let's find a route we can do in Skye. So after a bit of research, I found that the very last clan battle to happen on the Isle of Skye was in 1601 between the MacDonalds of Sleat and the MacLeods of Dunvegan. And the battle happened over a dispute about a cattle raid. And the location of the battle is in this epic location in the Cuillin Mountains in a corrie called Corrie nan Crecha. Now the word Crecha comes from Crech, which literally means a raid, a cattle raid. So the corrie of the cattle raid. So I was like, perfect, that's a perfect little story to base a journey around. So the next thing was distance. What sort of distance should we aim to cover? So again, I did a bit of research, what sort of distance people were doing to get to a raid. The furthest distance I found was actually one of Rob Roy's raids, where he covered 40 miles. Him and his men covered 40 miles just to get to a raid, which is insane distance. But looking at the sort of average distance that the MacDonalds and MacLeods would have had to cover on the Isle of Skye to raid each other, it was probably between 15 to 25 miles. Again, that's just to get to the raid. You would then need to drive the cattle back with you, which would probably take twice as long. So we're like, okay, let's take an average. Let's try cover 20 miles in 24 hours to simulate getting to a raid. Now, cattle raiding often happened in the months of September and October, because this is when the harvest was in, winter was approaching, maybe you wanted to get some more food for the winter. And also during these months, you often get these very still full moon lit nights. And it was these full moon nights that people would try and conduct the raid itself. So we thought, okay, let's try if we can get a taste of both night and day. Let's walk half of the distance, 10 miles during the day, and then walk the other half of the distance in the middle of the night, only using the moonlight to guide us and try not to use any modern head torches. Now we thought poetry, we need to include poetry, so we thought, okay, let's see if we can write a poem in our own heads as we walk, and we can share it with each other once we get back. So we have an endurance challenge, we have a poetry challenge, but this still left stealth. How can we be stealthy if there isn't a rival clan to avoid being detected? Well, it was only after we had decided on this route choice and I was researching more about this battle site, Corrie nan Crecha. And it turns out that it's not really known as Corrie nan Crecha anymore. It's generally known as the Fairy Pools, which is probably the most touristy area in all of the Scottish Highlands. And then we thought, oh, we could hide from tourists. That's perfect. That means we don't need to organise a rival clan, and most importantly, it gives us lots of comedy material to work with. And believe it or not, I think it's actually quite relevant, because these days cattle is no longer a big part of the Highland economy. Most of the Highland economy comes from tourism. Now, of course, I've got nothing against tourists. I'm a tourist every time I go visit a new place. But there is a paradox with tourism when it gets too big. It causes a huge pressure on the infrastructure and the environment. It causes house prices to skyrocket, meaning locals can't afford to live anywhere. And it creates these dead communities of empty holiday houses in the off-season. So too much tourism ends up destroying the very thing that people are going to see in the first place. So this is actually quite a big talking point in Highland politics today. And I'm sure some locals of Skye will appreciate our humour. But don't worry, we're just joking. But now you got the backstory, sit back, relax, and enjoy our Highland Warrior Challenge cattle raid adventure. I'll see you there. The night before our adventure, we prepped our bannock bread rations and prepared our clothing and weapons. We decided not to bring any extra sleeping blankets or animal skins so we could be as light as possible. Jason's kit is that maybe of a poorer clansman. He's wearing a medium weight plaid, simple leather shoes, and has a wool sash carrying his supplies. He is armed with a dirk and a Lochaber axe, weighing around 2.5 kilograms. For myself, I was wearing some cow rawhide shoes I recently made, and my clothing and weapons is that of a wealthier clansman, wearing a heavy plaid, a fitted wool jacket, and armed with a broadsword and targe, which weigh around 6 kilograms put together. I'm carrying my supplies and my homemade sheepskin backpack. Okay, so Jason, 3 aspects of the Highland Warrior Challenge: endurance, stealth, and poetry.
Clever.
Okay, now avoiding tourists,
I'm not sure if we're going to last 5 minutes, to be honest.
We're in the heart of the beast.
We're in the heart of the beast. But, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
So we go for it.
Let's do it.
Grab your axe.
Tourists.
So we've probably only been walking about 30 minutes or so. So I'm already not enjoying carrying this torch. Also the first time I'm taking my homemade Highlander shoes, these particular pair, out for a spin. And all we have is this hard rocky track, so I'm already feeling it a wee bit. I haven't had much time to condition my feet with these shoes. Also, I didn't expect that dealing with heat might be one of the challenges that we would face. We've been hiking for about 2 hours, really steady pace. Yeah, we've definitely been compromised. It's impossible to. There's people everywhere. Cheers, never birdie to the gilbies.
Easy to track.
Alright? Compromised. But we figured if someone asks us for a picture, then that's compromised. That's how the McLeods will know that we're here.
Our digital footprint.
Digital footprint. So yeah, we're just about to head around the corner to a quarry. That was the location of the last clan battle in the Isle of Skye, 1601. And it's there that we will find our cattle and we need to raid. You ready to go, Jason?
Let's do it.
Then we need to escape over the mountain. Let's hope it cools down a wee bit before then. Not deep enough. March. We're in the belly of the beast.
Tourists everywhere.
Let's see if we get a closer look. Oh, look over there, over there.
Fish and chill. It's a cow.
That's what we want. Right, keep an eye on the tourists. They're easy to see. They generally wear bright orange jackets. Come on! Ah! Come on! Right. Got it!
Nice.
Okay.
Do you smell that?
Aftershave. Do you hear that?
Motorhome.
Motorhome. Quick. We gotta escape over the mountains.
Let's go.
So after wasting about 30 minutes filming that sketch, we continued our journey round the steep quarry and down the glen. I don't know how we're going to get over there. Never thought I'd be so grateful to be walking in the shadow of the mountain. It is surprisingly warm. I don't know about you, Jason, but I cannot handle the heat. So far, still feeling alright, energy-wise. Tar just digging in a wee bit, but it's bearable. The shoes, we're holding up pretty well on that hard path, but now it's pretty slippy. Kind of boggy, slidey stuff, so it's probably been a couple hours since we captured our cow there on the far side of the quarry, and yeah, Jason and I were just saying how how much it feels like a morale has plummeted already. It's so hot. I've already had to put some oil in my testicles to stop the chafing. And it's already
personality in between your kilt.
Exactly, and it's already washed off and it's back to being sore, and we're slipping all over the place. Man, I just think it covering that distance on terrain like this, you would have to like jog.
Yeah.
But like, I would not be able to jog with a targe wrapped around me. But yeah, tough going. How's your shoes holding up, Jason?
Too good?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. Well, you know,
So-
used to it. Whoa. Jeez, let's see how deep that was.
Wow. This is why I need to keep a safe distance from that Lochaber axe.
Yeah.
If you slip, he's just gonna split my head open.
Hopefully not. What a way to spend a Saturday afternoon, cleaving the head of your best friend, you know. Jeez.
Oh. Literally just fell in one. That's rain, man. That's rain. So we've done about 10 miles. We're about halfway of that kind of 20 mile mark I was aiming for. We have our cow. So I think we're just gonna chill out here and you know, cool off until nightfall, and then we'll walk back, completing our 20 mile kind of length. So as is often the case in Scotland, as the sun goes down, the midges come out. We don't have any insect repellent with us because that would be cheating. Really the best way to get rid of the midges is lighting a fire, smoky fire, or just wrapping yourself in your plaid. Kind of acts like a big midgie net. So what we're probably going to do is have a few hour nap and get up when it's dark. Hopefully the moon will be out. I'll show you my plaid system. That's to put all my weapons together, targe, sword and dirk, and actually that targe makes a pretty comfy wee pillow. Oi, Cigar.
Hi.
So I don't think you can see anything in the camera now, can you?
Nope.
Damn it. Well, it's dark and it's cold, so it's time to get my wet shoes on and get going. Okay, so Jason and I had a couple hours sleep. The moon is now up above the mountain, and now it's time to try and navigate back. Now this GoPro is rubbish in low light. Jason's currently shining a torch on me to film, but we're going to try do this without using any head torches, any modern equipment, just try to use the moonlight. But if we have to do a little video diary, we're going to have to shine a torch in it. But other than that, I'm looking forward to just going off the moonlight, which the camera can't really pick up, but it's pretty good. So we've been walking for about probably 2 hours. We had one section on the road and a car came past. We had to jump into a ditch. So I don't think we got spotted. There was some tents as well that we didn't realise until we were right next to them. But I don't think they saw us, so far we've been undetected. Just go back to the van. Man, I pooped. I don't know about you, but I wouldn't have energy to raid cattle and fight off people who don't want you to do it. But really nice night.
Quite enjoyable, actually. I think especially in the sense of if you had very little kit to go with, I think the idea of fuller moon nights during the summer months, when you'd also have shorter nights.
Travelling at that and having little tactical naps.
Yeah, exactly.
That was good. My feet are very sore. It's like the 4-day expedition all over again. But yeah, happy days. Well, I think Jason and I are going to try to get a bit of sleep before the sun comes up. Alright folks, well we finished the walk at 5:30 this morning. After walking through the night, we spent the first half of the day kind of recovering and recaffeinating. So we're looking at three sort of attributes, you could say, of the Highland warriors. So the first thing, endurance. We found this average of 20 miles a day. Yeah, how did you find that? Do you think that's a realistic distance you could do that?
Yeah, I think so. And I think especially if you have minimal kit and you're in pleasant conditions during the day, then it would make sense to just chill out during the day, catch some sun, take some naps, and then doing the night walk when you're coldest. Yeah.
Well, I found the 20 miles, it really is hugely dependent on the terrain, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with these, old school shoes, actually the best thing is kind of squishy bog heath, but without too high vegetation. Like, that's the easiest to walk on. If you're walking on lots of rocky trails, then they start to hurt. If you're walking on a slope, then because they're so soft with absolutely no grip, you're just sliding around everywhere. So it really is dependent on the terrain.
Yeah.
And carrying the weapons, that targe was not as bad as I expected. I thought it was going to be an absolute pain, but I guess because I left my extra sleeping blanket and sheepskin that I normally carry behind, it didn't feel like too much of a burden. Actually, it was quite a comfy seat and pillow to sit on.
Luxury.
Yeah, you were pretty lightweight with the Lochaber axe, and I'm glad you didn't chop my head off where I was trying to keep your distance. Every time you slipped, the axe was just like, It's more realistic when you're leaving behind the sleeping blankets and stuff like that. I can see how it would work. But still, 20 miles in a day is no easy task. And these guys were usually going the route less travelled to not be detected. So it's pretty impressive. That's just one way. They would have to come back, drive that cattle back, maybe even get into a conflict, get into a fight. So yeah, after today, like, we'd be absolutely knackered.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I wouldn't be up for a fight right now.
No.
I want to sleep. But the second thing, stealth. We failed instantly on the first day. It was so busy. People definitely saw us. But then that brings us to a point, is just like walking at night. Like, no one saw us at night. And, other than using our head torch to film, or the occasional little checking of something, we didn't use a head torch all night. It was totally fine. It was so bright.
Yeah.
Still, like, amazing the capabilities these guys would have had.
Different caliber.
Different caliber of folk, man. Just so tough. Yeah, this makes me feel like such a modern softie, man. But the final thing, poetry. So we said that we would write a poem each. We haven't really heard each other's in full yet. So Jason, can you remember your poem?
I think I can.
Do you want to share it?
Yeah. So the laughter of friends, the touch of a loved one, a conversation, all things to keep someone warm. Food made with love, fresh water, good energy, all things to keep someone warm. The voice of the trees, the voice of the river, the breath of the earth, all things to keep someone warm. Enthusiasm, intuition, and improvisation, and a 5-meter blanket, all things to keep someone warm. And that's it.
Nice, man. Play that.
Modern time.
Yeah, I'll see if I remember mine. Moving with the river flow. Tie on cowhide shoes and go. The moonlight shows the path ahead. The way we will walk, the way of the dead. The deer call breaks the night. The song of fight or flight. The silhouette of a mighty blade, marching men on a cattle raid. Those days have passed, and the men are gone, just a faint and bloodied song. There are things that we must leave behind. I want to live in peace and be kind. But the fighting spirit is in my soul, and I will be a student of the moon forevermore. Or something like that. But hey, don't have a pen and paper, and that was in the middle of the night
Yeah.
without any caffeine, so.
Yeah. Oh, it was really good.
So, I hope you enjoyed this video, folks. Thanks so much, Jason, for joining me in another random adventure. Please let me know in the comments what sort of other Highland challenge ideas you have, other things you want to see. If you want to find out all about my work, check out my website, tomlanghorn.com. There I've got an online course to teach you how to go out and do random adventures just like this. Also, if you want to nerd out about Highland history, there's a link to my Patreon page on my website as well. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you haven't already, if you want to see more videos. And yeah, I'll see you in another adventure soon. Keep your cattle safe, because we're coming for you.